All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our second session of our CAN-ARX live Q&A. We appreciate that so much. My name is Kristen Cote. I'm an outgoing director at SEDS-Canada, and I'll be moderating this session. All right, don't want to waste any time, so we'll just jump on into it. Here we go. All right, so today is the second session, like I said. We'll have another group of 2 sessions on July 5th with the same sort of timing, 1 p.m. ET and 7 p.m. ET. So if you missed this one, or if you're on replay and want to have a chance to ask live questions, those will be your chance. Of course, you can email us, but if you want to ask us live, that's totally cool, and you can join those sessions. All right, next slide, please. Who is SEDS-Canada? Just a bit about who we are. Our mission is to strengthen Canada's future in space by providing post-secondary students with unique projects, research programs, and professional development opportunities in all sorts of sectors in the Canadian space sector. So governmental, industrial, institutional, academic, that sort of thing. We're a student-run nonprofit working across the country to inspire and empower students joining the space industry. And we're a member-based organization, and we're almost everywhere, except for a few provinces and territories. So if you know anyone in those provinces and territories on your screen, please let them know about SEDS-Canada. We would love to have them join SEDS in any capacity. And, you know, we really create a platform for students to advance Canada's space sector and learn valuable skills. The key is learning those skills for your future careers. We like to say we're training the future space workforce here in Canada. Awesome. So in each of these sessions, so all the sessions are similar. The Q&A might be different depending on who's around to ask questions, but we'll always go over the same presentation. And the presentation is split up into 2 sections. We're going to overview CAN-ARX, what it is, sort of the basic fun facts. We'll break for questions. Then we'll overview the participation options or the application streams, because there are a few, and just details on how to apply. And then we'll have more time for questions. All right, so yeah, if you at any time, if you have any questions, please toss them in the chat. Awesome. We're going to start our presentation here, and I will allow Roxy to join the stage here. Hey, Roxy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, perfect. All right, so you'll be talking about CAN-ARX.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Great intro, and I'm really, really happy to be talking about the newest addition to our lineup of projects at SEDS-Canada called the Canadian Arctic Research Expedition, which we call CAN-ARX for short. So this has been a partnership between us and Western University's Institute for Earth and Space Exploration. You'll hear a little bit more about them and their role in the whole project. And then we also have a few community partners. We have the Space Generation Advisory Council, as well as Astrius. And so these community partners help us find, subject matter experts and help to promote the competition, and have been really, really valuable in bringing this competition to life. So my name is Roxy. I'm the project manager for CAN-ARX, and I'm just going to go through some quick details about the project, and so that we can hop right into some Q&A. So to start off, what is CAN-ARX? So I already mentioned the title here. It's an opportunity for students to design either some kind of engineering instrument, or you can do a scientific experiment. So with previous competitions, we've focused a lot on the engineering side of things, where students have to design and build something physical, like some kind of experiment, instrument, something like that. But right for this competition, we are opening it up a little bit more on the science side, and encouraging folks who may not be in the engineering field to participate as well. So the science-based projects have to have some kind of a hypothesis. So it's hypothesis driven, or you can do the traditional route, which is designing and building an experiment. So regardless of which one you choose, you do have to fit into one of 4 general topics: planetary science, atmospheric science, resource utilization and food production, or remote healthcare. So for this first iteration of the competition, whose expedition is going to be happening in the late spring of 2022, we are selecting one student team from the pool of applicants to actually go to the Arctic and conduct their experiment. So CAN-ARX objectives, there are some of these that overlap a lot with some of our other projects and that tie in very nicely to SEDS-Canada's mandate overall that Kristen talked about earlier. So the first one of these objectives is to allow students to conduct research in a novel setting. So we know that the Arctic can be sometimes a little bit daunting or just so far away, and not many people get to experience what it's like to conduct research there. So we really want to bring the Arctic kind of closer to people who might not have the chance to go there ordinarily. Next, performing meaningful science and publishing the work. So this is really important to us. We see the ability to actually publish peer-reviewed science in journals to be a really, really valuable thing to put on your CV, and can be really great for if you're applying to grad school or even just any job in general. Seeing that on your resume or CV is extremely powerful. Next, connecting with the local community. We have a very extensive engagement plan where not only the SEDS-Canada members, but also yourselves, if you're selected as the winning team, will get to be involved in doing some outreach with the local community, depending on where we go in the Arctic. Building connections with professionals. This is a really important one, regardless of the field that you choose to go into and pursue. Building that professional network is really important for finding new opportunities, collaborating with people, super important. And then lastly, this one is one that's pretty much applicable to all our projects, honing communication and presentation skills. You will be, first of all, presenting to us a proposal. So that means you need to be able to really articulate your ideas and explain in detail what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and all those things. And also presentation skills throughout the entire duration of the building and preparation phase. You'll have to present to a panel of experts, people who will evaluate your progress and give you some feedback. So presentation skills, all in all, super important for any job in the future. And then there's not just benefits for you, but also for Canada and the Canadian Space Agency in general, who has this vision and mandate of training highly qualified personnel, what they call HQP, for future careers in STEM fields. So moving on now to a few of the details of the competition. So we've down selected 4 sites where you can choose to do your research. So when you write your proposal, you'll have to select one of these sites. There's one, this green one here is the Kluane Lake Research Station, which is about 2 hours away driving from Whitehorse. We have the Western Arctic Research Station in Inuvik, and then we have the Canadian High Arctic Research Station in Cambridge Bay, and then the furthest one up here in the north of the Polar Continental Shelf Program Logistics Hub in Resolute Bay. So you can see they all have these boundaries around them. That's just to signify that's the area in which you can pick a specific site to do your research. So if you require a glacier, for example, or something like that, and it's within the boundaries that we have set, you are eligible to go there for your research. So if you want an interactive map of this, screenshot picture here, there is one on our website, seds.ca/CAN-ARX. So now moving on to timeline. So as you know, proposals are due in about a month on July 18th. And then after that, we will have a 2-week review period where we will invite a panel of experts to review all the proposals and select the winner. Around that same time, we're also expecting the Canadian Space Agency to put a call out for funding called the Flights and Fieldwork for the Advancement of Science and Technology, called FAST. And so this is the major grant that we're going to be using to fund our expedition in 2022. So flights, accommodations, some scientific instrumentation, all that type of stuff. all the costs involved with the expedition, we are hoping to pay for using this Canadian Space Agency FAST grant. So once that is open, we, along with the winning team, will then apply to that. So you get experience with grant writing as well. And then we'll hopefully hear back from the CSA around January 2022 to know if we get the funding. Very important fact is that if we don't get the funding, that may mean that we need to delay the expedition for a while. So even if you are selected, you will be asked to, go through all of the steps to actually build your experiment and design your experiment. So we won't actually know whether or not we can go in 2022 until after most of your experiment is likely going to already be built. The expedition window itself, as I mentioned, late spring, so we're targeting May 2022, and the duration of the expedition will be about 2 weeks long. In terms of what we'd be doing day to day on the expedition, one thing to note is that we can only invite 6 members from the winning team to join us and some folks from Western University on the expedition. So you can have more than 6 members on your team, just to be aware that only 6 of you can join us in the Arctic. So this is just a general example of what it could look like, but obviously based on the winning team's experiments and what they require once on site, this may change. But in general, we'll have 1 day for arrival and setup. We will have orientation and safety training. So even though you may already have worked in the Arctic or have experience working in the field, this will be mandatory for everybody. We'll have a couple of days for prep work. So a lot of you may be bringing instrumentation, or your experiment might be in pieces to transport to the Arctic. But then once you get there, you might have to assemble things. So we'll accommodate that. And then we go into the field days. So this is when we're going out to the site that you've selected to actually do the scientific experiments or run the tests. Interspersed throughout, we do have a couple of days on day 7 and day 13 that we've allocated for lectures, guest lectures from members of the community, or potentially some interesting people who have done research in the Arctic already, and as well as outreach. So I mentioned that we have this extensive engagement plan. One of the things that we'll be doing is going to nearby schools, so elementary and high schools, and doing outreach there. And we will have the winning team conduct that outreach along with us. More field days in week 2, and a little bit of time for data analysis, if time permits, and then departure. So that's just a general overview of some of the important elements of the expedition and the site. So I'll pause here if there's any questions so far, and then we can continue on with the different streams of applications after that. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thanks, Roxy. There isn't any questions in the YouTube chat right now, so I'm going to throw some out because I feel like this is useful information. Can you explain the difference between a science and engineering project in more detail?
Yeah, so the engineering ones, you will have to actually tell us what you're building. So you'll have to have schematics like CAD drawings or just drawings in general of what you're building. And then you'll have to give us a detailed list of materials and what's its electrical power, mechanical, like can it withstand transportation all the way to the Arctic and things like that. It will go through sort of a similar design cycle to what you would see in if you're in an engineering program. So first it'll be like a preliminary design review, critical design review, and we'll have folks give you feedback on your design, make sure everything is good to go and will actually function. So in the end, what you would be doing in the Arctic would be testing what you built. So it's not so much hypothesis driven in that scenario, or you're not necessarily collecting data using some kind of instrument that you may have purchased. So it's something that you built and will be then testing. So for example, a rover or something like that. A small rover is an example of an engineering project if you're building the rover. In terms of science, that's a lot more kind of fluid and not really defined as much, but you can purchase some already designed scientific instruments, like a spectrometer or something like that if you're testing I don't know, composition of rocks or things like that. This would be hypothesis driven. You would have to tell us why you need to go to the Arctic in order to collect the samples or collect the data in the Arctic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that was an awesome answer. And one more quick one. Can you give an example of a project that falls under each of the 4 categories?
Yeah, so in terms of planetary science, that would be one where you are looking at, let's say, the composition of rocks. Maybe you're doing like a LiDAR experiment or something like that, something that's relevant to what an astronaut would do on another planet if they were going there and they were trying to understand the geology or something like that. Atmospheric science, you may be collecting samples from the atmosphere. This you could either do, that could either be in the engineering side or the science side, depending on what kind of instrument you want to either build or use. Food production and resource utilization, that would be something like, what could we do in situ that would help humanity establish like a settlement in space? So we are only there for 2 weeks, but there's some things that you could do in the realm of, say, food production, like testing novel hydroponic system or something like that would be relevant. And then remote healthcare, that would be something like testing hardware or software related to measuring somebody's biometrics or something like that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We do have one question from YouTube, so thank you for posting it. And it sort of says, the FAST grants are loaded. Absolutely. Lots of good money from the FAST grants. How is that funding broken down? So research, travel expenses, SED stuff, etc.
Yeah, I believe we allocated, Kristen, tell me if I'm wrong, 70,000 or so for travel and accommodations.
Yeah.
So travel and accommodations will be a large chunk of it. Then we will have some left over for purchasing or renting of equipment. Now, like I mentioned in the timeline, we won't actually get the FAST grant until much later. The team may have already designed and built part of that experiment. It's important to note that you can't retroactively expense things on the CSA grant. So anything that you build, throughout 2021 will need to be covered some other way. And then once the CSA funding kicks in hopefully January, February of 2022, then we can start to put some elements of your experiment onto that funding. But most of it, will be allocated to travel and accommodations. We don't have a complete breakdown yet. We're actually hoping to work with the winning team to see how we can integrate everything and build that budget. That's why I said the winning team will definitely play a really critical role in actually writing the grant, because it's important that we figure out how much you're going to need for your specific experiment.
Absolutely. And just a note on the sort of SEDS admin cost. We're all volunteers at SEDS-Canada, so we don't have any salary costs or admin costs, things like that, just for travel to support. Awesome. Okay, let's keep it going. I will toss your slides back up and feel free to continue.
Awesome. Yeah, so for the remainder of the time here, I'm going to talk about some of the different application streams that you can apply to. So depending on where you're at in terms of your education level, there's a lot of different ways that you can participate. So the first one is you can be part of a primary team. So when we talk about those 6 students that will be traveling to the Arctic along with Western U professors as well as ourselves, that's the primary team. You will be doing the more hands-on collecting of data and going to the Arctic and all of that. So All the details on eligibility for that is in the handbook, which is found on our website. It's called the Primary Team Handbook. So just briefly for eligibility, any student studying at a Canadian post-secondary institution is eligible, whether you are an international student, you have permanent residence, you're a citizen, no matter what, as long as you're enrolled in either college, CEGEP, university, you are eligible. Part-time, full-time, all is good. The one restraint that we do have is that the teams must have no more than 34%, so about a third of members of the team be graduate students. So most of the people on your team have to be at that undergraduate level or CEGEP college level. So form your team. There's no restriction on how big your team can be. Minimum is 6, but only 6 can attend if your team is larger than 6. Then you have to find a faculty advisor. So this is someone who is, a teacher, a professor at your institution who can help guide you through the whole process of designing your experiment. And then you have a proposal to write. So this is what is due by July 18th, is the full proposal. So we accept them by email at the CAN-ARX@SEDS.ca email. And this will entail basically just a written report that includes introduction, hypothesis, rationale for using the Arctic. There's a rubric in the handbook that describes every single point that you need to address. So it's really important because that's how we're going to judge the proposals. So make sure you definitely address all of the points in the rubric that's found in the handbook. And yeah, submit it by email by July 18th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Now, if you don't have a team and you live in the territories, so if you're aged 17 to 25 and you're living in either the Yukon, Northwest Territories, or Nunavut, you can apply to become part of the delegate team. So we, as part of building connections and partnerships and collaborations with the North, whatever primary team is selected will also be working remotely with the delegate team from the North. So we're asking individuals to apply, and then if there's multiple individuals that apply, they will form that delegate team. But the delegate team could be as small as one person. We'll just see who ends up applying. And essentially what their role will be to take on a whole subsystem of the primary team's proposal. So I put an example here of something that the delegate team could be in charge of would be something like 3D CAD modeling and simulations. So that would be sort of the subsystem that they would work very closely with the primary team through remote collaboration to put the whole project together. So for this, the application process is a lot simpler than the primary team. So you don't have to write a complete proposal. There is an online application form. It's a Google form that you can find on our website. So you'll just have to submit a few documents and then also answer a few questions, and that's it. And you can be part of the delegate team. So no prior experience with any engineering field or anything like that is necessary. Anyone can participate. And we actually encourage folks who may not be from traditional engineering fields to become part of the team as part of the delegate team. So next, if you are a researcher or graduate student who is studying health or medicine or something like that in remote and isolated environments, the CAN-ARX Human Health Study is the application route for you. So we will have 6 students as well as SEDS and Western people in the Arctic, and we are asking researchers to use the expedition crew as your subjects for whatever experiment that you would like to test. So a note here, your experiment must be pre-funded and pre-approved with Institutional Review Board approval. So that's anything related to human studies needs to have IRB approval. So we are not providing funding for this specifically. It's just going to be sort of an add-on bonus data collection that we're going to be doing while we're in the Arctic. Regardless, if we select your application or not, we won't be able to support you coming to the Arctic with us. So unless you have your own funding to do so, but if you don't, then we are happy to completely conduct your research on behalf of you, and you can sort of lead it remotely. But this would be something where if you're interested in studying human behavior or psychology, even like how do teams function together while they're working in austere environments, if that is something that you're studying, that would be an excellent proposal to submit as part of this particular stream. So for this one as well, it's not a full proposal that we're asking for. It is, again, it's an application form, but we do ask that you address a few extra sort of constraints. So things like I mentioned, do you have your own funding? Why do you need to go to the Arctic to do this research, and things like that? And obviously it can't interfere with the main objectives of the primary team while they're in the Arctic. So it does have to have some element of being more or less passive data collection. So something that's not going to require a huge amount of time would be ideal here. So I mentioned earlier, we have these, the handbook for the primary team. We also have information booklets for the delegate team and the health study streams here. And all three of these documents you can find on our website here, SEDS.ca/CAN-ARX. So these are really important. Regardless of the stream that you're considering, please do read thoroughly through the entire booklet. It has a lot of information in there that I won't be able to cover in this short 30 minutes. So application tips, like I said, address everything in the rubric. It's the easiest way to get a high score is to just think like a reviewer. So address everything that's in the rubric, make sure everything is there. And then in terms of the delegate team, because you're answering questions and submitting a few documents, just make sure to answer each question to the best of your ability. And when in doubt, ask a mentor to review your application. The more eyes that you get on your proposal or application, the better it usually is. Sometimes you can miss things even if you've read it over and over and over again. So definitely get your friends and mentors to review your documents before submitting. And also, if you have any other questions, we're happy to answer. You can email us at CAN-ARX@SEDS.ca. So yeah, I've already kind of mentioned this. Everything's on our website, SEDS.ca/CAN-ARX. Tons of great information on there, including the booklets. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is the templates. There's a few templates that you'll need if you're applying for the primary team. So things like, I think there's a budget template. And if you're doing an engineering stream, there's templates for some of the critical information we'll need about your design. So make sure that you use the templates. It'll save you tons of time. And yeah, as I mentioned before, the Google Forms, if you're applying for the delegate team and health study streams, are there as well. So that's a direct application route, no emailing us required. And then the field site information, where you can actually use an interactive map and kind of zoom in and look at the site and the boundaries of each location. So applications are due July 18th. Make sure to note that this is Eastern time, 11:59 Eastern time. So if you're on the Pacific, that's 8:59 p.m. Pacific time. And if you have any other questions that we may not get to in this session, please do email them to us. We're also going to be populating a Q&A on our website as well, based on what kind of questions come in through these Q&A sessions that we're running. So happy to take any more questions now.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Roxy. We're actually going to bring a couple more people onto the stream. Let's see if this works. We got Ricky, who is an assistant project manager of CAN-ARX, and we also have Kevin. There we go. Another assistant project manager of CAN-ARX. So this is sort of the CAN-ARX team. We got everybody here. So I'll ask a couple questions. I don't see any more on the YouTube, but I have some of my own. How should we go about choosing the best expedition location?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would suggest looking in the handbook. We have these little paragraphs that explain what are the sort of general features of each area. Each one is kind of unique. So definitely look at that and consider. We chose these because they have some relevance to being a Martian analog or something like that. So based on what kind of experiment you want to do, look through those descriptions in the handbook.
Yeah,
Anything else?
I would like to just add on to that. Make sure that your experiment fits into that specific location. So don't just pick a location because you want to go there, obviously, but make sure you pick the location that is suitable for your experiment and its special conditions, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. The another interesting point is the maps and the interactive features, being able to find and really kind of pinpoint if you're at that level of planning can really help to see what terrain resources available, especially if you're more in the geological side of things.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the success of the CSA FAST application relies on you being able to make a good science case for your expedition location. So definitely good advice all around. Awesome. Can this happen? What if your project is relevant to multiple sites? Is that okay, or?
Yeah, so even if it's applicable to multiple sites, ideally, we'll ask you to select one. We'll also be working very closely with our partners at Western Canada or Western University, who, they will be more or less leading the expedition. So if in the scenario where the winning team doesn't have a preference, then we might defer to the PI, the principal investigator from Western, to sort of make that call.
Awesome. An easy one. We've gotten this one before, so just putting it out there. Is there a required major to apply?
Yeah, absolutely not. I'm a cell biology major, and I love being part of engineering projects. So definitely encourage anyone, even if you're in communications, if you're in business, if you're in physics, just anything is anything goes. Anything, whatever you're studying, you can apply to this competition.
Awesome. Yeah, for any of the streams, diversified teams do the best. So definitely gather your friends and just get everybody part on the team. Awesome. Okay. And I think with that, we'll leave it there. So thanks everybody for joining me on our second session of the CAN-ARX Live. And we'll see you soon on the next one on July 5th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.